everybody comes to the next month's meeting, I'm gonna give you guys a kick-butt scope of work checklist. And actually, a checklist is not your scope of work. It starts off with a checklist first, because you come through the home, yep, needs a roof, needs this, needs that. You take pictures like what Eric's doing, what he's doing on Facebook at the moment. And so you have a memory and taking pictures or video. So when you go back to do your scope of work, or when you're doing, your estimating, you have pictures of everything, and just because you're never gonna remember everything. So it's nice to take photos. You have a checklist as to what needs to be repaired. You don't necessarily need to do the estimating, although I can teach you how to do the estimating within 10 minutes. You don't have to do detailed, and I'll get to that in a few moments. But I'm gonna give you guys a checklist, and you start off with a checklist. Then, once you decide and you do your estimating, and you run the formulas that everybody knows, the R minus times 70% minus repairs equals Mayo's maximum allowable offer. You don't want to pay maximum allowable offer because Mr. Murphy, if you know what Mr. Murphy is, Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong, will come knocking at your door. And so you have to have a fudge factor. A lot of times people put in 10% or whatever factor that you want to put in, but that's why we don't want to pay Mayo. Then once you have an accepted offer, once you've done your estimating and you feel you're comfortable and you've handled, how you're going to finance it, because the cost of money obviously has to be put into it, now you start doing a scope of work. And the scope of work is very important of how you write up the scope of work, the words that you use, not to be ambivalent. It's got to be very clear, otherwise you run into problems with your contractors. Well, that wasn't really clear. You didn't spell that out. You don't have to tell them what size screws and what size nails to use. That doesn't have to be that detailed, but it needs to be pretty detailed. And so the scope of work will get you a better price, and it also then the scope of work then gets incorporated into the contract. That becomes an addendum to it. So why do it twice? Just incorporate it right into the contract. So with the plumbing that we were just talking about, there's two things that you should always be on the lookout for. The first two things you should look for. I'm an ex-plumber, so maybe that's why I go looking for it, but it will catch you, and as I just told you before, if you've already renovated the house and you didn't catch that because there was no leaks, there was no damage, and you just assumed it was just cosmetics. So why did you go looking for it? You came in the house, the water is on, everything's working fine, but it's got the wrong plumbing. And so what happens is the insurance companies don't want to cover floods due to plumbing breaks. So you can get insurance, but they're going to exclude that. And it's interesting, and I don't really have the answer for you as to how, whether or not they ask you on an older home. They don't generally come out and do inspections, but it could be once there is a break and they find out what it is and they send an inspector out. If you didn't read the fine writing in your policy, there's probably an exclusion in there that you didn't see. Right? You've run across that, Terry?
No, but that's what they do.
That's what they
do.
do.
They just put it in there. I mean, that's right. Business these days.
It's business. The insurance companies always look for the smallest little loophole not to pay you. Speaking along that, one of the ways that they won't pay you is you have the wrong insurance on that house. So if you have a house that's under construction, you can't just say it's a vacant home. A vacant home is a home that's ready to be rented, but it's not rented yet. And if it's a landlord policy, if you have it rented, you need to change it from the builder's risk policy when you're doing the construction to that. Otherwise, they won't pay you. I mean, it's the simplest little things. Even though you're paying them their premium, if it's the wrong type of policy, even though they all cover the same damage, they won't pay you. So it's real important to make sure that you have, your dot your I's and cross your T's. So once you do the scope of work, then obviously you can start getting your bids. And that's really the order it goes in. So now what do you do once you start? The first thing that we do, as I started to say before, is get rid of all the junk. Get a dumpster there if it needs that. Clean the house out. If there's drywall that's here, it's been neatly taken down, but a lot of times it's holes and moldy, and so now do all your demo. Get rid of all the drywall that has to come off the walls, or anything else that has to come down that you're getting rid of. You get rid of the kitchen cabinets. Do all your demo. Once the demo is done, then the plumbers, the electricians, the air conditioning people, they come in, because they may have to open up other drywall if it's a replumbing that I was just talking about. And during that stage, that's when you want all your mess done. So obviously it makes sense in the planning stage to do it in that order and not jump back and forth. You're already finished with fixing the drywall, now you got to open it back up. And I see too many contractors as well as investors doing that, where they finished with the drywall work, and then they're on finished work, and they've got tile down, they got wood down, and all of a sudden they're doing drywall work again because they forgot something, because they didn't detail and go through, because they didn't start off with a detailed scope of work. So it really is important to do that, and that's kind of like your guideline, so that you know what stages of how to do that. So once now all your mechanical is done, then you can start doing some, bringing in, it depends on what you're doing. It might be the new cabinets coming in, it could be tile work. You want to get all your messy work done. You never put your carpeting down, you never put your hardwood floors down until the last thing. You don't want hardwood flooring, it's a nightmare to get the dust off of that. If your tile guy is cutting the tile in the house, let him do it when there's no flooring down, because it's going to create a mess. I prefer them to do it outside or cutting, but it's summer and if it's raining, it's not at the end of the world if they're doing the work inside. Carol, where are you?
Right.
Oh, right in front of me. What do you do when you're in those, or are you usually working in somebody's home?
Usually if we're in a confined space, like just a kitchen or bathroom or something, we'll seal it off and create a negative airspace where you're,
Okay, so you're
pumping
conscious
all
of that.
dust and stuff outside, because it's much cheaper to stay clean than it is to clean the entire house when you're done.
Exactly, right. And that's a good point. A lot of times we've done that where you're cutting concrete. We just had that in one of our student housings where we put in bathrooms and we had to cut the concrete. And it's a 2-story, and I wasn't there when the guy did it, and he made our whole house white with dust everywhere. I mean, it just went everywhere. It was a nightmare. I made him clean it, but it's still, the cleaning that he did, it still needed a lot more cleaning. He got the main dust off. So you want to really think ahead and not have to do work twice. So once you do that, another thing that you're going to look for, so is there any questions on the poly tubing? Because today there is a similar, the way that tubing comes, it comes on rolls, and the plumbers like it because they can snake it around without having to cut and glue, or if it's copper, soldering. So if they're coming over here and then they want to get over to here, they can just snake it. My dad and I, when I grew up, they didn't have that kind of plumbing. They had rolled copper, but that usually only used underground. My dad was very particular. It had to be angles, nice and neat, even though once the walls get closed up, nobody saw it. He said, but I see it. I know what it looks like. And electricians are that way. They're very neat, generally, on more on commercial, where everything goes almost like an artwork, the way they do it. So you want to look for the poly tubing. Today, there's a white tubing that looks similar to that, has the same band. So just remember, white's okay. It's a milky white versus the bluish gray, not okay. The bluish gray is they out of business. The white is called PEX. PEX is actually the most expensive. Nobody uses copper. Copper probably should be more. But the difference between
Good morning, everybody. I want to show you the property that we're looking at today. It's been basically a total gut. It's over here off Lake Brantley. It's a real nice house, but unfortunately it's been a lot of work needs to be done to it. Take you around real quick. So as you can see, tarps all over the roof. There's leaks everywhere in this house. The ceilings have been totally gutted. Take you a quick tour around. All right. So as you can see, ceilings have already been removed pretty much throughout the whole house. It's been a total gut so far. This was the kitchen. No longer a kitchen. Let's see what's over here. We got the garage. Another bedroom. Once again, ceilings ripped out throughout the whole house. Everything's been gutted in this house. House has poly tubing. Make sure you replace that when you do a rehab. This is the master bedroom. A little bit small. Plus about this house, as you can see, it is on the lake. I'll take you guys out there here shortly. Very small master bath. A lot of work needs to be done to this property.
Drops are one drop for cold, one drop for hot, so it's safe as 2 drops. So So every sink is 2 drops, the washing machine's 2 drops, toilets are 1 drop. So it goes by how many drops is going to determine your price on the replumbing. So you don't want to miss that, because between the 2 of those, you're talking $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 if you miss that. That will really hurt you. Before I talked about doing, when you're estimating and putting in your offer, that you're going to use the R formula. A house like this, you wouldn't have to stick with the R formula. Why? So if you buy a house, what is ARV? ARV is after repaired value, in case we have any real beginners in here. It's just an acronym for same thing as market value, or what a pretty house sells for. So the first thing you do when you're doing your homework is you look to see what are the sales that have sold within the last 6 months, and hopefully within a quarter mile. And in this particular case, it would have to be lake frontage. You couldn't compare a house that's sold across the street to a house that's on the lake frontage. You can by price per square foot, but then you'd have to determine what is the extra value for being on the lake, what's the extra value for being on a golf course, or what's the extra property for being on a river, or anything that commands more money. When you have the R, let's go on the low end, and let's say you have $100,000 after repaired value, all the homes in that neighborhood are selling for $100,000. When you see
So as you can see, this property is right on Lake Brantley. A lot of potential with this property. Got a nice dock and everything. Fortunately, they're probably asking way too much at this point. Need to get them down in price, but gorgeous property right on the lake. So anyway, guys, hope you guys have a great rest of your afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. You want to learn how to fix and flip with a builder? Follow me and my father. We will show you the right way to do things. Have a great day.